Hello to all IB PYP educators. Today in this session, I am going to share my understanding about the approaches to assessment as per the Standard and Practices 2020 of IB PYP. In this session, we are going to highlight the interconnectedness between teaching, learning, and assessment. We all know that in the primary years program, assessment is an integral part of teaching learning process. The IBPYP emphasizes a balanced and holistic approach to assessment that takes into account the interconnectedness between teaching, learning, and assessment. Before we proceed ahead for understanding how exactly teaching, learning, and assessment influence each other in the process of education, let us understand in the context of primary years program what are the standards and practices. Basically, the standards and practices refers to a set of guideline and expectation provided by the International Baccalaureate Organization for the implementing and maintaining a high quality PYP curriculum. These standard and practices provide a framework for school to follow and ensure consistency and quality across the PYP schools worldwide. These standards in the PYP represents the desired outcome or goals that school aim to achieve in various aspects of the program. They provide a set of benchmark against which the schools can measure their performance and progress. Practices in the PYP represents recommended approaches and strategies for implementing the PYP curriculum effectively. They offer practical guidance for the school on how to achieve the standards and successfully deliver the program. Let's move ahead to understand the approaches to assessment standard. Learning, teaching, and assessment effectively inform and influence one another. This standard emphasizes on the three components: teaching, learning, and assessment. How are they interconnected? How they inform and influence one another. We will be discussing each component step by step with an example to understand how exactly they interact. Let us start with learning. Learning informs teaching and assessment. Let us understand how with an example. Educators needs to understand how the learners learns best. Their prior understanding, their willingness, their readiness, their preferences and individual need of the learners. This knowledge should guide instructional decisions such as selecting appropriate teaching method, strategies, designing learning engagements, determining assessment method that aligns with the desired learning outcome. If we take an example of plant growth, a science context based lesson, under learning, it is very important for the educators to know exactly how the students are actively going to participate in the learning process. Either it is by listening to teacher, either it is by observing the visual aids, asking questions to deepen their understanding. They may also engage in discussion or group activities to share their prior knowledge and build new knowledge collaboratively. To do all these things, the educators should know the willingness, the readiness again, and the preferences, so that keeping that in mind, the educators can design their engagements. For the best of their knowledge, it is very much important to know your learners. Moving ahead to teaching component. Teaching informs learning and assessment. Effective teaching practices should foster active engagements, provide clear expectation, offer support and guidance, and create an opportunity for students to apply their learning. The teaching basically should be relevant, should be significant, and should be age appropriate. By adapting these teaching approaches based on ongoing assessment, teacher can address students' strength, challenges, and misconception, leading to the improved learning outcomes. With the example of plant growth again, under teaching, the teacher introduces the concept of plant growth by explaining the stages of plant life cycle, the factors that contributes. They may also use visual aids, diagrams, real plant specimens to engage students and provide a clear explanation. So, it is very important to know that the way we teach is going to have a direct impact on the way the learners are going to learn and the way they are going to be assessed. Moving ahead to the third component, that is assessment, informs teaching and learning. Assessment provides valuable feedback both to the teacher and to the students. It helps teachers gauge the effectiveness of their instructional strategies, identify the areas that require more attention. Assessment also provides students with feedback on their own progress, awareness for improvement, fostering metacognition, and support their ongoing learning journey. With the same example of plant growth, throughout the lesson, the teacher assessed the students' understanding and progress informally. They ask questions to check for comprehension, observe students' engagement and participation, and provide them feedback to address any misconception or gap in understanding. This assessment helps the teacher to make adjustment to instruction and provide additional support as needed. So, through this example, it is evident that teaching, learning, and assessment are interconnected throughout the learning process. The teaching facilitates the learning process while both assessments inform and shape subsequent teaching and learning activities. The assessment provides feedback to the learner and teacher, helping to guide instructional decision and promote ongoing learning and improvement. Hence, teaching, learning, and assessment are indeed inseparable components of the education process. Teaching informs learning. Effective teaching strategies and techniques provide the foundation for students to engage in meaningful learning experience. When teachers use appropriate instructional method, they create an environment that supports students' understanding and encourage active participation by structuring the learning process and presenting information effectively. Teachers facilitates students learning. Same way, learning guides teaching. As students actively engage in the learning process, their responses progress guide teachers in adapting and modifying their instructional strategies. Through observation, questioning, and formative assessment, teachers gain insight into students' understanding and can adjust their teaching approaches accordingly. This feedback loop ensures that teaching is tailored to students' need and promotes further learning. Same way, assessment supports teaching and learning. Assessment plays a crucial role in informing teaching and learning. Formative assessment, prior assessment conducted during the teaching and learning provides timely feedback to students, highlighting their strengths and areas for improvement. This feedback enables students to guide and regulate their learning and make necessary adjustment. Simultaneously, teachers use formative assessment data to adapt their instruction and provide targeted support to address the students' needs. The quality of teaching and learning experience directly affects the outcome of the assessment. Effective teaching practices that foster deep understanding and skill development are more likely to yield positive assessment outcome. Similarly, active and meaningful learning experience contribute to accurate and valid assessment results. Students' ability to apply the knowledge, think critically, and demonstrate their understanding is influenced by teaching, learning opportunities they receive. To sum up today's session, teaching, learning, and assessment are interwoven and interdependent components of the educational process. They work together to create a dynamic learning environment where teaching practices facilitate learning, learning informs teaching, and assessment supports and guides both teaching and learning. These components are inseparable as they rely on each other to promote students' growth, understanding, and achievement. Thank you for your attention on this important topic of teaching, learning, and assessment interconnectedness.